I'm up at St Catherine's Hill, and we came up here to look for elder trees for two reasons. One, I want to cut a piece of elder and make something out of it, but also this fungus. This fungus, which grows on elder and can be found year round. And this is a fungus, well, nowadays we call this wood ear. It used to have a name, Jew's ear, but obviously that name has fallen out of favour for reasons that should probably be obvious. So this is an edible fungus. It grows on elder, and elder is quite easy to recognise when it's alive. That's an elder tree there. When it's dead, the fungus continues to consume it and produces these very, very ear-like, rubbery fruiting bodies. So we're going to pick these today because they're good eating. They've got a very unusual texture, but they're great in stir fries. So we're going to pick some wood ear today. And this is a very interesting fungus because it dries right up like this in dry weather, and in fact it will dry harder than that. It will dry to almost like little crisps of horn, it looks like. You know, it's very hard material. And it'll dry right up like that, and then in damp weather it will rehydrate and it comes completely back to life and continues growing and continues living. And this tree is absolutely covered in it, all over. Here are some very dried up ones, and you can pick them when they're dry like this because they can be rehydrated at home. So what I'm going to do, I'll pick that little one there that's quite dry, and we'll take that home and I'll show you what happens if we soak that in water. But we'll also pick some more fresh ones. There's some down here on this piece that's fallen over underneath here. So we'll have a few more pieces and then we'll take them home and cook them. Well, I don't know if you can tell, but it is actually raining and it seems to be getting harder now. So I think we've had the best of the day, and I did not manage to find my piece of elder timber, so that will have to wait till another day. But anyway, let's get these mushrooms home and we'll have a closer look at them. So let's take a closer look at these wood ear or jelly ear fungi that we've picked today. So it's got a kind of velvety texture on the outside of the cap, and then a rubbery feeling underneath, and the smell, well, sort of sweetish, slightly fruity smell, but also a little bit like rubber, which is kind of weird, isn't it? Like rubber bands. It's got a bit of that smell to it. But you can see why this is called an ear fungus. Doesn't it really look ear-like? And sometimes you can find really very, very ear-like examples of the thing. I mean, there we go. There, for example, that does look like a earlobe, doesn't it? So this fungus can be dried and rehydrated, and it does that naturally on its own. So here's a fairly dryish piece that's dried up to a sort of velvety, rubbery texture. That's not completely dry. When it does dry out completely, naturally, it dries up to tiny little hard shreds, almost like plastic or rawhide, it looks like. And you can still pick it like that because you can rehydrate it. And so you can dry this yourself. You just actually lay the caps out like that. Maybe give them a wipe because they've got some dirt all over them. Give them a wash or a wipe. Lay them out on a wire rack. And in the space of a couple of days, they will dry up to tiny, tiny little shreds. And then you put them in water and they rehydrate perfectly. And they come all the way back to where they were. And in fact, I believe they come back to life, because I think that's how this thing, the life cycle of this thing, spans multiple wet and dry seasons. And so this fungus actually is capable of suspended animation, and hydrobiosis, I think, is the term for that. Anyway, we're going to have a look and see what happens to this dry one here when we put it in water. So I've got a little glass of water here, and we'll just sink it in there, and then I'm going to put that over here, and you can watch a little time lapse of what happens to that over the course of the next few minutes. So the rest of these we will take downstairs and we'll give them good clean, and I'm going to cook these up this evening in a stir fry. Haven't looked at the footage yet. You might already have seen the time lapse, in which case well, you'll have seen what's happened. But anyway, that's the one that we've soaked. And it's come more or less back to the same as one of the fresh ones. Obviously, we don't know what size it was before it dried out. So anyway, what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to give these a wash, just pull off any little bits of moss, and then they're going to get sliced up and fried. They're a really weird texture. They almost feel like they're just two layers of kind of outer skin with a jelly-like substance in the middle. Well, that's pretty much exactly what they are. Anyway, we'll have a look at that when we chop them up. Now, you might notice I've broken two of my regular rules for mushrooms here. One thing I always say is don't put them in a plastic bag, but I did here. And the other one is that I say don't wash them, and I did that also. With this species, actually both of those things are fine. It's a really rubbery, watery species. It doesn't have gills that you can get dirt trapped in, and putting it in a plastic bag is actually the best way to get it home and intact and nice and fresh. And also, yeah, because it is so rubbery and so jelly-like, washing it only enhances that texture. Anyway, what I want you to just take notice of is, I'm going to take a nice plump one. Let's find one here. There's a nice plump piece there. Just want you to listen, because this gives you a clue as to the texture of the mushroom. The texture of this mushroom, I think probably the best way to describe it is kind of crisp jelly. It is quite gelatinous inside, but it's not exactly soft. It's kind of, well, crispy. So even though it has got this jelly-like interior that hopefully you can see there in the middle, and it is quite rubbery and jelly-like, it retains this kind of crisp, ever so slightly crunchy texture all the way through cooking. So anyway, we're just going to chop that up into little slices. Just going to lose that bit of the stalk there. We'll chop this up into slices. We're just going to fry it in some oil with a little bit of salt, and then I'm going to take it off the heat and I'm going to add it back into a stir fry that we're having this evening. I will taste a little bit of this after we've just fried it in a moment, and we'll probably end the video there. The smell is, it's not distinct, but it's, yeah, I would say fruity. So the smell is like apples or apricots or something like that. Okay, tiny bit of oil in the pan, and I've just put those in before it came completely hot, because I don't want them to spit and splatter. They're quite wet, and if I just dump them straight into really, really hot oil, it would have just splattered everywhere and made a mess. No, I don't need that. Okay, and those are done. So I'm just going to put them aside into a bowl, and then we'll add them back into our stir fry towards the end of cooking. So that's what it's like when it's cooked. It's not an awful lot different from when it's raw. Obviously that is cooked all the way through. Let me just taste a little bit of that so I can describe it to you. Very just lightly mushroomy. Slight fruity sort of flavour. Really doesn't have a very distinctive flavour. And the texture is just soft but with a crisply jellyish bite. It's really weird. It's almost like the sort of bite that squid sometimes has. So that is wood ear or jelly ear fungus, and I'm going to have that in a stir fry this evening. I'm not going to show you all of that, but anyway, that's how to prepare that fungus. You can add it to soups, you can add it to any kind of stir fry, anywhere where you'd use mushrooms really, and it's a different kind of texture, but quite interesting. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.